Former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has slammed President Bola Tinubu-led government over the release of Rivers State withheld allocation to the appointed sole administrator despite the ruling of the Supreme Court. ATN reports that the Apex Court in February 28 barred the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, the Accountant General of the Federation and other agencies from releasing allocations to Rivers State government pending when it purged itself of what the courts described as flagrant disobedience to court orders. However, on Tuesday last week, President Tinubu declared a state of emergency in the state and consequently suspended Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, and all members of the State House of Assembly for 6 months over the lingering crisis. Tinubu, in a nationwide broadcast, announced the appointment of Ibogete Ibas as the sole administrator to pilot the affairs of the state. On Friday, Ibas confirmed in Port Harcourt that the withheld allocations have been released. Reacting, Obi, in a statement on Monday, said the decision to release statutory allocations to an appointed sole administrator, despite a standing order of the Supreme Court, is not just unlawful. It is a direct challenge to the authority of the highest court of our country. Well, that's Obi's reactions as regards the funds that was released to the sole administrator of Rivers State. I would like to get your own reactions to these statements made by Peter Obi.
I think Obi is right. Obi is right because if we are talking about compliance to the Supreme Court judgment, except a situation whereby perhaps there are a kind of a conspiracy between the presidency and then the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Otherwise, the judgment says that allocation shouldn't be released to Rivers State until when the budget is being represented to the Amehule-led State House of Assembly. Okay. And now one will begin to wonder, that budget has not been presented. I don't want to jump into that of a declaration of a state of emergency. So as it stands now, the budget has not been presented.
Okay.
So on what basis does the president have to declare, approve, appropriate such right to himself, and then release the purported seized Rivers State allocation to a sole administrator? So at the end, I think one is beginning to see that the reasons that are being given, there are so many things behind the scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you think this action by the federal government, releasing funds to a sole administrator undermines the Supreme Court's authority in this case?
Of course, it does, because if we are to look at the Supreme Court judgment, it's clear. Allocation ceased pending when budget will be represented. So in as much as that budget has not been represented, so on what ground, on what basis? Yes, I understand that perhaps issues that has to do with allocation, even the seizure. I don't want to fault the Supreme Court on the seizure of a Rivers State allocation. Yes, without consideration to the implication of doing such. Maybe the president may have realized, he's the commander-in-chief. Apart from being the president, he's the commander-in-chief. So he's now using his power as well to ensure that that money is being released so that workers can be paid, the governance can continue. But it is a good thing that they have realized now the importance of allocation, to running of a government. Now that it has been released to a sole administrator, do we have the state assembly? The answer is no. We don't have the state assembly. There's no state assembly as it stands now.
Okay.
So on what basis has that allocation been released? Let it be justified to us. Let it be clear to us. Or could it be that there's another technicality in the judgment of the Supreme Court that should have given the president the leverage to release the allocation without, representation of the budget? So to me, I agree with Toby, despite the fact that yes, the state needs that allocation so that it can function. Workers need to be paid. Governance, need to be maintained. But for Supreme Court, in its own wisdom, I don't really understand where they may have relied upon to decide that the allocation should be seized. And given the reason that because budget has not been presented. So you can see now there's a conflict between that of the president and between that of the Supreme Court. So unfortunately, it is the Rivers people that has been brought into limelight of whatever caricature that is being made.
Well, I'm wondering, could there be any legal implications of bypassing the Supreme Court's, order? And if there is, and could this set a precedent to probably for other states?
Ordinarily, the answer would have been yes, if truly the law works. If truly the law works, what the law says is what stands. Because the suspended governor was alleged to have been spending money that has not been appropriated, right? And that he should go back and represent before spending. Okay? And within the period that he was making an attempt for this representation, the next thing we heard was a state of emergency. Not just state of emergency, his suspension. Let me leave state of emergency, that he has been suspended. A sole administrator appointed and sworn in even before the approval of the National Assembly. Now the allocation has been released. So is it that the judgment of the Supreme Court has changed, and we are having two different judgments that should have prompted the release of the purported seized allocation to the sole administrator? So in all, we are beginning to see the truth. We are beginning to see how our political leaders are making caricature of both Nigerian law, of even the judiciary, and of the people, the society entirely. The society entirely. So whatever that he would have realized, why didn't the Supreme Court realize that in no circumstances, even if it has ruled this issue before, when he, being the president now, was the governor of Lagos State, that on no condition should an allocation be seized. Now it has to do with Rivers State. It was ordered that it should be seized. Now the man has been suspended. Surprisingly, the allocation has been released. It has many implications. Legally, it has many implications. Because one, the president, has not obeyed the Supreme Court. That is it.
Okay, so looking at this now, probably ahead of other elections that, definitely we have 2027 right at the corner, and there would be series of elections and all of that. But could Peter Obi's criticism now resonate with voters or opposition groups ahead of, probably the elections that we have come 2027?
You see, when you know that there is a future contest, you don't give people room to criticize you justifiably. This one that Peter Obi has done is justifiable. I cannot align it to 2027 because what he has said is just the truth.
Okay.
It's just the truth. So when somebody has spoken the truth, no matter the circumstances, no matter his interest, what you look at is that you look at the time frame. The president didn't calculate well. So he has opened the doors for opposition to criticize him with genuine reasons to present to the electorate. So he has a point. He has made a point. So I won't align it to 2027 or no 2027. No. We should look at it. What he has said. Is it the truth or not? Then before we can talk about his speaking, because Obi has been speaking even before now. He has always been speaking up whenever anything goes. So
he has always been criticizing
the
administration.
Especially when things goes wrong, of course.
Okay. All right, so, well, before we move on to the next story, how might this crisis, like we've seen, definitely we've had the sole administrator and everything seems to have cooled down. Well, the question is, what would Rivers State be like after 6 months, after the sole administrator's, role in all of this? What would it be like, most especially looking at the fact that Port Harcourt, Rivers State, is one of the oil-producing, state? What would this mean to our economy, or how the economy will look like after the 6 months of his intervention?
See, there's already economic implication. Immediately that state of emergency and suspension of the elected officials, both executive and then the legislature, was pronounced, it has economic implication because by the virtue of that declaration, you have enlightened the world that the place is not secured. That is it. There are so many things that are wrong going on. Life is not safe, property is not safe. So who would want to invest? You have created fear as well. So it has a lot of economic implication. And anything that happens to the oil, oil and gas, for instance, the threats that preceded this declaration, okay, and then the attack that we have heard, it has already started affecting the economy. That many people, oh, this is actually maybe the genesis, but we pray it shouldn't escalate more, because I heard, was it today or yesterday, that another gas plant.
It's still unverified, actually.
Oh, it's unverified, okay. Yeah. So you cannot see it's unverified, but you may be getting so many unverified information coming and then adding to the economic implication of this declaration. Of course, yes, one would have now, if it is been ascertained that that particular explosion, actually did happen, then if the previous one was what you relied upon to suspend the governor so that someone can come and guarantee security, now another one has happened in the person's presence. So what then should you do? You should also ask him, suspend, and then appoint another. That is it.
Well, I understand the fact that you said you do not want to talk about maybe the state of emergency in River State. But again, if the president hadn't taken this step of, suspending the River State governor or calling on state of emergency, looking at the attack that happened on the pipeline, don't you think we would have had more issues, emanating from that one to another one? Don't you think this is a right step in the right direction that have been made by the president to make sure that this is curtailed, or we do not have emergence of other pipeline vandalism or
if the president doesn't have interest in one of the parties, now there is a threat, okay? What are you supposed to do? Declaration of emergency. It doesn't warrant suspension. All he needed to do is to mobilize. That was why I started reference here last time I was on air here. That we had a period when militancy was, bombarding, acting, operating. And then we also had court wars between, I think it was Degbam and Dewelas, and then in Port Harcourt. There was a presence of military personnel to curtail such. What is needed is security. Bringing in security operatives does not require suspension of governor. It doesn't require suspension of the State House of Assembly. It has nothing to do with that, because they will always operate. And whenever there's any security threat, it is for the military or for the security operatives to move in. The sole administrator, has he gone to that particular place now that the explosion happened? No, his operation is for what? Governor. That is within the state. So it has nothing. It's a quite different area. Anybody that is beginning to think that if the president didn't declare based on that particular attack, how it would have been the presence of, my dear brother, where the people are living is not even where such operation or attack took place. So military would have mobilized to all the operational bases of Nigerian oil and gas.
All right.